every dancer wants to know how to best improve their flexibility. I think it's important to know what exactly are we stretching. And most of us think when we stretch, we're stretching muscles, which is true. Muscles can cross one joint or two, and they're responsible for moving the body in different directions. That's the action of our muscles working, usually in synchrony, kind of like an orchestra tuning. One muscle group fires, another group fires, another group fires. It's never one tiny muscle alone that's working to conduct a motion. It's all kinds of muscles crossing a joint that act in synchrony with one muscle group firing at exact timing and next muscle group firing in order to get the desired motion with a smooth and effective pattern. When the muscle firing gets off, then things like this occur. I'm trying to raise my arm, my shoulder's raising up instead, and that can cause injury and pain. So when we stretch muscle, we have sarcomeres, which are the units within the muscle. And you can think of it like this. The sarcomeres get put on stretch, and at some point, they hold still. And that's when you're stretching and you hit that point where it doesn't feel like you can go any farther. The most effective stretches are those that last 30 seconds or more. Anything less than 30 seconds will not increase the extensibility of those sarcomeres. In the first 10 seconds, you'll feel that muscle just go to a certain point and won't want to release any further. And then the longer you're there, if you relax enough and breathe, you'll feel it give a little more. And every time you stretch, you can gain just a little bit more extensibility at a time by staying there a longer period of at least 30 seconds. Also, the more relaxed you are with the stretch, the better. If you're holding your breath and tensing up, your muscles are going to maintain that rigid posture and they won't be as extensible. The next thing that we need to consider is the ligaments. Ligaments attach bone to bone, and they're very short. You have ligaments in every joint of the body. So even in my finger joint, I have ligaments crossing this little joint. I have ligaments crossing this little joint. So the ligaments are very short. In the shoulder joint, they go front and the back. They basically cover the joint. And what they do is they keep the joint stable. Without the ligaments, the shoulder would hang in the joint. And so they act to stabilize joints. So we want them to maintain their tautness. The ligaments have some pliability, but not as much as muscle. For ballet dancers, since we are requiring our body not to do a pedestrian normal range of motion for different, like for legs especially, we're asking our hip muscle to have ranges where our leg is up near our face, right? Ideally. So because we have such severe end ranges of motion that are abnormal for normal people, we are going to be stretching the ligaments out to some extent as we're stretching the muscle. This predisposes us to injury. So it's really important that we keep the muscles as strong as possible across the joint so that the muscles can help maintain the joint integrity to keep the joint from slipping out of alignment. Okay, so as we stretch, we will be inadvertently stretching ligaments, but ideally, we don't want to force the ligaments on overstretch. We want to respect some end ranges of limits. Some of you might be hyperflexible. The common test is like pulling the fingers back, and if you can touch your fingers here, there you're really hyperflexible. Elbow hyperflexibility, you can see mine goes a little bit past 0 degrees, and there's a little bit of hyperextension. Most dancers have some inherent hyperflexibility. That's why we're kind of pre-selected to be ballet dancers, because we have the ability to get into those extreme ranges of motion. The more hyperflexible we are, though, the more careful we have to be because, again, the joints can become very sloppy and that predisposes us to injury. So we not only want to stretch effectively, we want to stretch in a very smart and intelligent way so we're not doing more harm than good. In this video, I'm going to show you some basic techniques for stretching and some recommendations I have, as well as one little trick that might help you out a little bit. And if you watched my video about warming up, just remember, stretches are best done when your body is warm. Stretches are not going to be as effective at the beginning of class when you're cold and you've just come in out of the outside. That is not a good time to work on increasing muscle extensibility. When you have broken a sweat, when your body is warmed up, when your heart rate is up, Then the circulation is going really well. The muscles are warm, actually physically warm, and that is the best time to try to work on improving the flexibility. So here are my recommendations for stretching. I'm going to quickly show you the difference between ligament and muscle for a stretch. So the hamstring muscle, there's a couple of different ones. One's medial and one's lateral. I'm going to show you the lateral one, going from the posterior hip to the posterior knee. So it runs on the underside of the leg, and it's long. When she goes to the side for a port de bras, it stretches, just like a TheraBand would stretch. Go ahead and come back up. At the same time, ligaments are very short. Okay, they attach bone to bone, and you have a whole bunch of them throughout the hip joint. So as she goes to the side, the ligaments are also going to be put on a little bit of stretch, but they're not as stretchy as the muscle. They're going to have a very hard endpoint. So here's an example of poor stretching techniques. She's straining, she's bouncing, holding her breath. All of this will not increase muscle extensibility. And actually, that can do more harm than good. So I had her come off the stretch so that we gave her legs a break before going on to a proper muscle stretch. So here's an example of good stretching techniques. She's going to lean forward slowly into the stretch. So you want to gradually ease into it, and you can let off of it a little bit and then go down a little farther incrementally. That's a really good way, and I'm having her put both arms forward so she keeps good alignment, relaxing and breathing as she goes. So you don't have to hold the position for 30 seconds. You can play with it a little bit. You want to ease into that stretch over the 30-second time period, and you want to make sure other parts of the body aren't tense. That's why I had her move her head a little bit there. So you can see she's going down into the stretch a little further. The longer you hold the stretch, the better the results. Just don't hold it for hours, just a couple minutes, and then come off the stretch slowly. Here's an example of a contract-relax technique in order to get a better stretch. She's going to try to bend her knee with a 5-second hold, hooking her foot underneath the bar there, so the bar is keeping her from bending the knee. She's going to repeat with a maximal effort each time for 5-second holds with a 5-second rest in between, 3 times. So she's trying to maximally bend that knee, and then after that, she can extend the leg and go into that hamstring stretch slowly. And I asked her at this point, does that feel easier? And she said, yes, it does. So that's an easy trick to use. We talked about overstretching and how it was a bad idea because we want to keep the joints stable. So if you're stretching a split, 180 degrees is enough. You don't have to go over that. So if anyone ever suggests you put something underneath your feet when you're stretching in the splits, this should be a reaction. I hope you got a few good tips from this video in how to more effectively stretch. And I can't stress enough to be respectful of the limitations your body is telling you about. The more you try to force something that doesn't want to move, the more you set yourself for injury. So sleeping in a second split with your stomach on the floor in severe pain is only going to set you up for misery for weeks. I've heard all kinds of stories of dancers putting weights on themselves to try to improve flexibility and all this other. Like, that is not a good idea. The grand battements on your back with an ankle weight, super bad idea. Remember I talked about ligaments attaching bone to bone and how you want them to maintain integrity? You can shred the ligaments of a joint to bits with those ankle weights on during grand battements. So just forego any of the crazy stuff. The longer you hold the stretch, at least 30 seconds at the time, the better. The more warmed up you are, the better. The more you breathe and relax into the stretch and maybe come off the stretch a little bit. And then also remember the contract relax technique. If you're hitting kind of the wall with the stretching, if you go ahead and let off a little bit and make the muscle contract, what we call isometrically, so it's not really moving. So for shoulder flexion, if I'm trying to raise it up and I'm not getting anywhere, I would push down. I'm pushing down with my arm, but not moving anywhere for about a 5 to 10 count hold and then relax, then I have more of a chance to gain flexibility because I've let one muscle group go ahead and maximally work against the stretch like it really wants to. And then the muscles are more relaxed to go into the direction that you want. So play around with these ideas. I'd love to see your comments on this video. And if you have any questions, please reach out.